my secret.
Good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is. Good evening. Let's say good evening.
There it is. Good evening.
For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is the Pointing It Out podcast, where we like to talk about all things needlepoint or needlepoint adjacent, as we like to say. I am Melissa McLeod here at the Wool and the Floss in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, just outside of Detroit. And along with my co-host here,
I'm Megan Holmes, coming to you from just outside of the city of St. Louis, Missouri, and actually Kirkwood, Missouri. And I'm sitting in my shop, the Needlepoint Clubhouse.
Fabulous. And we have been doing this, I think this is our third year doing the podcast. And is it our third year also doing the challenge, which I think it started out as 21 and 21, and then it was 22 and 22. And now it's the 23 and 23 challenge. And exactly. If you were not following along with the challenge, don't be overwhelmed. A lot of lists like that mean you have to finish 23 items. That is not our goal. Our goal is to give you an outline to perhaps enrich your stitching time, I think is a good way to say it. And hopefully you have some finishes along the way, but that's not a requirement. And at the end of the year, we will have some really great prizes. We already have our grand prize in hand, and we're going to get to work on getting some other fun prizes for everyone. So
I think the idea is that if you you could print out, I think that's what I did. Mine looks like a total mess here. But the idea is that you at least attempt to do each of the things on the list. You've got a little cutout of yours. I've got a Post-it note.
No, it's just like all ripped and destroyed because it's gotten a lot of love this year.
Right. And so these were and still are available to print out, I believe, from our Instagram account. Is that right?
There's a link on our Instagram account that will take you to it. Absolutely.
Exactly. And so the idea was, like you said, it's just kind of to give you some, I don't know, maybe just a little structure to stitching if you needed a jump start or just some ideas and tackling your stash.
There you go. And I have been moving along on it. I should have counted before we started how many things I haven't done versus how many I've done, but I'm doing a pretty good job. And Megan and I, of course, are not eligible for the prizes, but it's still fun to try to knock it off. So I think every quarter or so, we try to do a little update of where we stand. And we both realized that there's 4 more things we've both checked off our list.
We talk about this a lot. We talk about how sometimes we stitch things because of other reasons, because we are shop owners and because we are managing clubs and talking about new canvases and things. So sometimes what happens, well, I'll be honest, most of the time what happens is I say, what were we supposed to have done? Oh, shoot, what have I done that will fit into that category? So that works too. So either way you look at it, it's kind of a fun challenge.
And I forgot one really important thing. I'm going to pause us for just 1 second. Okay. I'll be right back. And nobody else will know if I can find the pause button anyways. Hold on.
So the first one on the list for the 23 and 23 podcast challenge is Stitch a Chart for Charity. And it's funny because I'm pretty sure that I printed out, no, that's not fair. I paid for and saved the Wool and the Floss Chart for Charity, which was at the end of last year, right? So I have the champagne glass.
I had so much fun stitching that.
I am such a paper nerd that I'm a paper calendar girl. I'm just a paper girl. And so I actually printed it. I know on your site, you could download the PDF. And then what I did was just save the PDF to the files on my phone. And if you were savvy and if your brain works that way, you could just zoom in on it and count from there. But I'm not. I need a piece of paper.
I'm with you. I do the same thing.
Because I started in the cross stitch world. Did you ever cross stitch? Have we ever talked about this?
No, I don't think I ever knew you cross stitch. I knew our friend Deb started out cross stitching, and I know enough to be dangerous about cross stitch. So
the very, very first thing I ever did with needle and thread was embroidery, like the top stitch embroidery, like knots and back stitch and all that kind of stuff. But then I started doing some cross stitch because my mom did. And my mom always taught me that you would cross things out as you go, right? So usually you start in the center, but then the way to count is to draw, find your center, draw a dot, and then I would literally draw lines through what I did.
Right.
And so I determined that the easiest way for me to do this is to put it in a plastic sleeve and to use a dry erase marker, because then I could, right? Thank you. Because it came to me one day and I'm like, why? My eyes are funny. Like they kind of like jump or something. And I have a hard time following a line. I think it's called something, but I have a hard time doing that. But if you have it in the
We can
sleeve,
call you a lot of things, but go ahead.
there's a lot of things you could call me. One of them is crazy, but the other thing is the inability to follow a straight line. But yeah, so I just use this little dry erase marker and forth I go. Now I will tell you, I'm all organized. I've got all the things. I've got it printed out. I've got my thing, but I have only just found the center. So I haven't actually put the stitches in yet, but I'm really excited about it because I found the center in my brown canvas. Do you sell this brown canvas?
We do. And people are always like, why would I want brown canvas? And I have to have the whole discussion of why, but I'm sure that's where you're headed. So I won't steal
That's where I'm headed. And I hope you jump in when I miss a point. But the point of this is that when you're stitching a chart, it's not painted. And so therefore you have no paint underneath the threads that you're putting in, right? And so I always find that a brown or a tan, I think they call it, is better because if I'm going to stitch white, which I intend to do, or if you want to change, like you just don't know what color, and you can always change a color. You can do whatever. I'm going to do this rectangular one, and I am very excited to change up the colors just a tiny bit.
Cute.
Right. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to show you like what I have done. What I have done is gotten organized, but I haven't actually put my
Maybe I'll see if Kate can bring me my champagne one that I finished.
Yours is darling, and I was really excited. You did the oval, right?
I did the oval, and then it has a little nod to you in my book. So that's why.
Right, because it's gingham behind it. Yeah. We could do that actually too. I hadn't thought about that. But I'm planning to do a real bow, and then I think I'm going to put it in here.
Cute.
We have a last man standing. This bag's been kind of sitting around the shop, and no one's used it. And I think I'm going to just do it for myself. It sounds so fun. I'm really excited about it, and it shouldn't take very long. You suggested it's on 13 mesh. I'm sure that a person could do it on 18 if they wanted to, but it would just shrink a little bit. I really want it to be a 4-inch square to fit in this.
Right.
And
13 versus 18, just if anyone's a newer stitcher and they're listening, 13's the bigger holes, 18's the smaller holes. And it's really has of the threads per inch. Where I'm really going with this is 18. If something's designed for 13, 18 mesh will be about 25% less.
And you know what? I'm going to back up too, because we've been talking about how a lot of people listen to our podcast. They don't watch it because they're stitching while they're doing it. So what I just held up is a square wicker self-finishing bag. And it is a 4-inch square opening. And so the chart that I'm looking at is a chart for charity that Melissa offers. Do you still have it on your website?
It is. It is because we have a new chart for charity. This one is still available for purchase. It's no longer for charity, and only because when we roll out the donation for charity, we get like a lot of interest right away. And so it's just too much for me to keep up with to donate $20 here, $20 there. So so this is my finished version.
So you did the champagne oval, and it's a little champagne glass with I love that you couched that bow on the bottom, which is what I was thinking of doing too. And then didn't you use Mary Legolay's book? There's a gingham stitch.
And it teaches you how to do square gingham stitch and diagonal gingham stitch. So I changed the background to be lime green in the diagonal gingham. So that's what I said. And so for those of you that are listening, maybe for one of the first times, Megan's shop Megan just in particular is known for her love of gingham. So whenever I do anything gingham, it makes me think of my bestie Megan. So yeah, that's why I said it's kind of a nod to you. So
that's exactly right. I love it. So I'm excited about that. Like I said, I've actually been doing some other stitching that didn't. So just so you all think I'm not slacking, I've done some other stitching lately that didn't fit into the podcast challenge items. Wow. But I am excited. I've got this all set up to work on. So
nice. Yay. And I think what we might not have mentioned, or maybe you did and I didn't hear you, is the purpose of the beige versus white is if you are a tight stitcher, you will see less of a like white halo effect or flaking. What do people call it? There's another word besides halo effect.
Not halo effect. Oh, like a speckle. I don't know. There's a lot of ways to call it, but I think so that you don't see through where the thread doesn't particularly all
You
the
don't
way.
want the white canvas peeking through. The beige will peek through less, but there's actually a proper name for that. We just can't come up with it right now. So someone can type that in the comments. How about that?
Yeah. The only weird word I can think of is dandruff, and that doesn't make sense. Isn't that gross?
Oh, so I am also working on a chart for charity, and I, like you, I think that they started chart for charity, they being mainly Morgan Julia and Jenny Henry and Sarah Truxas, I believe, those three together. I interviewed them. I should remember what year they started it. I think 2020. So this holiday door, isn't this so cute? This is
So it's a little door, what looks like it has an envelope on the inside. Cute, or excuse me, going into the door slot. That is very cute.
So that's from Grant Point Designs, and they picked their charity to be, I should remember, No Kid Hungry. When I did the charts for charity, we have a lovely gal that works for us whose husband is the recipient of a double lung transplant. So ours went to a Gift for Life. So anyways, I printed this out in 2020 because I'm a paper girl like you, Megan. And so you can see how can you see how I folded it? So when you said you haven't found the center
Yeah,
yet,
I did the same thing.
this is a really obvious thing for many people, but unless someone showed you, this is how you find the center. Take your, we sell blank canvas, just, and I know you sell it too. Do you sell it like in individual pieces or just by the inch?
We do both.
Okay, and we do both as well. Although recently, honestly, sorry, I'm picking this up. We just started selling it because I finally got with the program. And we sell 8x8 blank pieces, and then you can buy it by the inch as well. So if you take your 8x8 and fold, and then you can mark that corner. You can either put a little piece of thread there if you want. We also highly recommend a number 4 hard pencil. Don't ever use a regular pencil that smears onto your threads, and all of a sudden your white threads look gray and no one can figure out why, because they wash their hands. It's because they generally maybe accidentally used a regular pencil. So a number 4 hard pencil is your friend. So that will get you the middle of your canvas. And then I just took my big chart and actually it's blue. So another nod to Megan. There we go. I'm like fangirling over my best friend. There's a navy version and a red version. I happen to prefer the navy. So
who does prefer navy? I mean, come on.
I know. So I just started, this line looks a little awkward because I realized that on the chart, this was 12 stitches out to get to the side. And I like to do the outline because then I can do kind of some mindless stitching. Because some of the charts you have to really think about. Sometimes if you get to a certain point, it's kind of mindless stitching. So I just thought, well, instead of counting it, I'll just stitch it because this is all going to be navy around here anyway. The other thing that I've had a number of people ask me since we've now done charts for charity twice, I've had 2 things that have come up. And I just have to brag about our community. This is not a brag about me. Needle pointers are the most generous people on this earth, I swear. We, of course, sadly, had the wildfires in Hawaii about 6 weeks ago now. And so we threw out our charts for charity for Maui. And we as a community, not we as me, we as a needlepoint community raised $4,000.
That's amazing. Well done.
And I'm like, I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, which is like so pathetic. But it's just, you think like, oh, I'm just spending $20 here and $20 there. But it really adds up when everybody gets behind it. And so it just really warms my heart that these little acts of kindness can really go a long way.
Well done. And a couple things I want to add, if you don't mind. So number one, I think you'll begin to see more of these charts for charity popping up closer to the holidays, I would say, is when I see a lot of them.
Like Thanksgiving to Christmas timeframe, the
Exactly.
brand new releases.
And so never fear, if you don't have one, there will be some at the end of the year that you can pick up. The only other thing I think we didn't really address when you were showing yours, and the same with mine, it just so happens that the ones that we are working on fit on 8x8 piece of canvas. I would like to mention, I don't know how to say this. So your design is 4x4. It's a 4-inch square. I just happen to know, as a person who sells needlepoint and is now running a wholesale needlepoint design company, that you do 2-inch selvage on either side of that. And so when it says 4-inch square, it is advised to do an 8x8 piece of canvas so that you have some selvage and so you can put it on stretcher bars. But not, and it just so happens that the pieces that Melissa and I are both working on fit on an 8x8 piece, and we could fold it up, half and half and get to the center. But be sure to note when you're picking up this chart, whatever chart it might be, who knows what the dimensions of the chart that you might be doing. And so you may need a larger piece, you may need a smaller piece of canvas, but you could also just measure side to side, top to bottom, and determine what the center is and put a dot there and get going there. So
I will say I'm a bit of a glutton in a very good way when it comes to charts for charity. I have a whole like little binder of things that I might stitch someday. And I would say every single one of them calls for an 8x8 canvas. Like I think that's because they're usually either like, I think mine is a 4x4 square or a 3x4 oval. And a lot of them are 4-inch rounds or 4.5 or 5-inch rounds. Even a 5-inch round, you can get away with an 8x8. It only ends up being 1.5 inches, but it's workable. So I think that's fairly safe to say. So
that's actually great information, because if you're running into a shop and you don't have a shop locally, or if you're purchasing, you could purchase some 8x8 blanks and have those on hand for when you want to do your chart.
For sure. And when we sell our 8x8s for charts for charity, I totally agree with you that beige is kind of the way to go, but we tend to sell white because people haven't owned that yet. We can do it either way, but if you were to order it off of my website, you would get white. I don't know what you'd get off of Megan's website or another shop's website, but
I think we have it listed as both, but I'll have to double check on it. But
I know now I'm like, oh, maybe I should be doing both, to be determined. So I've had a couple people say to me, well, I really, really don't want to count and stitch and count and stitch. Can't I paint it, or can't I use markers for it? So if you have some permanent markers, you could marker it out. If you're really brave, I'm not that brave, you could paint it out. It's a good way, I guess, to teach yourself how to paint, because when we were at the retreat last October and Rachel Donnelly was there, and you guys had like a little mini painting class for us, and that was the first time I'd actually ever used paint on a canvas. How about that? So anyway, so those are some options. The other thing that I have started carrying, and I wish I had the ovals and the circles to show you, but I'm going to open up these. We just started carrying these mainly because when I did that oval, everyone was having a really hard time following an oval. I just almost dropped everything in my hand. That's why you saw my. So we sell these templates that I'm holding this up, and do you see how there's a center line? I hope you can see that. There's a center line and a center line.
So what is that made of what you're holding up? Is it plexiglass? It looks kind of
it's pretty
cloudy.
sturdy. It's pretty sturdy, but it's still translucent and see-through. So if you had a canvas that you wanted to turn, let's pretend you wanted to turn this into a square, you could be like, oh, a 3-inch square isn't going to work. That's too small. And you'd have your centers and you could draw your outline with your number 4 pencil. So we have these in ovals and circles normally, but I keep selling out of them and I've got more on order. But that has come up a lot because we've done a couple of these charts for charity.
So I bought a couple of sets of those from Joanne at Island House. They're clear, and she does the same thing that you've got there, which is the center lines, like sort of that crosshair in the center, which shows you the dead center. But there's, like, to your point, squares, ovals, circles.
Yeah, and what I like on our squares, and I haven't even talked about these to anybody yet, because people were asking me for squares, and I was like, really? People need a square? Like, that was kind of hard for me to get my head around, but I made them kind of multi-useful. So there's also some faint lines that you probably can barely see around the edges. So this particular template can be a 3-inch or it can be a 2.5-inch. And so that there's multiple choices. And then the rectangles I did in sizes that fit all of our self-finishing things.
Oh, smart. I know on the ones from Joanne at Island House, she has marks where a finisher would cut. So in other words, it has one line where you would stitch to, and then another line where you would cut to if you're gonna do some self stitching,
Oh.
I think. But I'd have to get some clarification. There's lots of lines on it and I never use it except for the center point and to draw. So I'm not definitely not a professional finisher or painter. So there's that.
Well, and I think what was nice for people is there's a lot of canvases in our world that might have like a pickleball racket and a ball, and there's no real background notated. So you
Mhm.
can figure out whether you want it to be a square or a circle or, whatever. So, I think that's all I've got about charts for charity. But as you can see, Megan and I both really believe in them. We're both, I think, very
Philanthropic.
philanthropic. Thank you. I cannot come up with that word. So
Well, remember that I was a professional fundraiser for 15 years. So if I don't know the word philanthropic, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, it was not coming to my head. So I appreciate you filling in the blanks. So I love to provide an option and I really love to support the option. So yeah,
Great.
there's lots in my stash. You may see more, but I think that they come together really fast. And I think last year we didn't have a chart for charity on the list. We had do a counted piece.
Oh,
which
yeah. Mhm.
Basically what a chart for charity is.
That's right.
And in my opinion, it uses a little bit different part of your brain than regular needlepoint does. And I'm hoping that'll be good for my long-term brain health, whatever that's worth. Okay, moving on.
Well, I'm over here kind of preparing my move on. So go ahead. I was like trying to get it. I realized that I wasn't in like prep mode. So
Gotcha.
what is the next one, Melissa?
Next one is use a thread you have to couch. And this whole discussion was just had a little bit. I'm part of the Spooky Spirits Instagram group that Helen at Whip It Good has put together for those that have done the Spooky Spirits Club. And there were so many comments about, I'm really scared to couch things. And I thought, oh my gosh, we haven't talked about this enough, because really couching is super easy. Like it sounds like it's like this mystery, like what is that? And
here I am all tangled up. I was about to show you mine, but I'm not like prepped and ready to show it.
So basically I'll summarize this while Megan's still fuddling. Couching is using some sort of thread or fiber on your canvas that is not a thread that you would typically stitch with. So something that's a little bulkier. And so usually most of the time you can find a way to get the ends to the back of your canvas, and then you whip stitch the ends to the back of your stitching. You would typically do it as one of the last steps in your stitching process. And then you take another needle and thread, typically a floss of some sort, beading thread. It doesn't have to be a beading needle. You can put it in a regular needle, and you're just tacking that thread onto the top of the canvas.
And when people even ask me, well, what does tacking mean? So if we want to boil that down a little bit, so going up and down, so up from the back of the canvas and down again from the front,
and just tiny stitch.
And a tiny stitch, exactly right. So I want you to show yours first, because mine is, I would say, couching 2.0, not couching 1.0. So what you're doing is you're going to show some memory thread, right? Or teddy thread.
Mine is wired Krynic. So
okay, cool.
So memory thread is a thread that Megan sells. You have it in bolts. Would you call it a bolt?
Spools, I think is what they call it. But it's
a big, huge, giant spool that you would never buy the whole thing.
Well, there was a lot of discussion around. So this thread you could use to. I don't think that's what you're supposed to say.
I'm with you.
You used to be able to purchase memory wire, which is a polyester covered wire, thin wire, that you DMC produced it, and you used to be able to get it in, I don't know, Melissa, like 5 meter,
5 yard, like little coils,
like little, yeah. And then it sort of like went out, but it was in all kinds of stitch guides, and the high level teachers loved it for different reasons, but you couldn't get it. And so we'd all heard sort of as shop owners, well, it's discontinued. Well, it wasn't necessarily discontinued. I think what they found was it was too laborious to put in the tiny little.
So the put up was discontinued, not the thread.
Exactly. And so when I found out it was available, I talked to our distributor, and she said, well, yeah, you can buy it in these big spools. And I was like, huh. So anyway,
are there 100 yards on that?
I don't even remember. I want to say it's like
No,
200 yards or so.
I think it's 250. It just popped into my head because you and I talked about it at the time you did it.
Quite a while. So this is going to last forever and a day. But what we do is we sell it by
The yard.
the yard. I was like, it's not the
Because I
It's not
buy it from you by the yard.
oh my gosh, what a dummy. So yes, thank you. It's by the yard because we have a tape measure taped to the side of the thing that you can measure it on, but for whatever reason I could not think of that length. So yes, by the yard. So what I'm showing is this huge spool that has 250 yards, and we sell it by the yard. I can't remember how much it is, but you only really typically need, like, what would you say, Melissa? Anywhere from like 6 inches to 12 inches for a project, maybe at the most.
Right.
But it's a cool thread. It's, you know, I don't know.
It
It's
has
just
great
interesting. There's
uses.
nothing else like it.
I have a finished version here that uses memory thread. So this is one of the Associate Talents acorns. And we actually have this trunk show here right now. I just remembered.
Cool.
But we are also planning a club with these acorns. I stitched these acorns years ago. And hopefully you all can see it if you are watching us. I know some of you just listen and don't watch, but the tips of the leaves have little twisted up pieces, the brown.
Oh, I see it. I couldn't even see it. So really
I
what it
know.
looks like is kind of like a little stem that has been coiled around to give it a little texture on the top of the canvas.
So usually like I will I will enlarge a hole, and I even came prepared, but now I have stuff all over my table. So what I
So
did was
some people use an awl, AWL, which is a tool that it's kind of like, oh, honestly kind of looks like an ice pick, but it's not super sharp at the end. And so you put it in the hole of the canvas and kind of easily maneuver your way into the canvas to open up that hole. Some people use their laying tool. What are you about to show us?
a laying tool works great because usually they come to a nice tapered point. Can't get the top off of this laying tool, but you guys know what I mean. So I am showing a laying tool. It comes to a nice tapered point. So you would just kind of put that point through your canvas and push down wide enough. Canvas is woven. I just had a discussion with Susan this weekend at our retreat, and she's like, well, aren't I going to ruin my canvas? No, what you're doing is you're shifting the canvas threads to make the whole little bit bigger, and they will just naturally kind of shift back. So laying tool is great. We also used to be a knitting shop, so we have a lot of darning needles left. And a darning needle for knitting is a really large needle, so it usually will also do the trick. That just happens to be what we have. I have even used the tip of my scissors, but be really, 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 really careful if you do that.
Yeah, you know, I'm gonna be honest. I've used a push pin in a pinch. I had a push pin sitting on the table, and it goes through, and it's thicker at that end, and so it opens. I would really say that the best tool though is either a BLT, which is the best laying tool, which kind of acts like a darning needle almost. It sort of looks like it. But I really like an awl too. The awls get a little wider than they don't get as wide. How do I say this? They gradually widen differently than
that's why I like the laying tool, because it's the same situation, and this is handy for me usually.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So it goes skinny to fatter, and that's doing the trick because you can.
So we're opening the hole in between the intersections on the canvas,
and
driving
your ends of whatever it is you're couching through. So in this case, when I use the memory thread, I would have made it wide enough. I would have put about an inch on the back of the canvas and whip stitch that to the canvas. So basically buried my either beading thread or floss or whatever, buried that in my stitches and just gone around and around and crossed over the piece in the back, because it doesn't have to look pretty. There are no needlepoint police. No one cares what the back of your canvas looks like. You don't want it too lumpy. So you want to kind of make that memory thread flat on the back of your canvas as best you can. And then I think I used the end of my laying tool to curve the memory wire around and kind of make little curly stems, or like piglet tails. So yeah, I love memory thread. And I order it from Megan. So I highly recommend you all order it from Megan too, because it's very hard to find in the needlepoint world otherwise.
So we have a memory thread bar because I went all in on the memory thread, and it has been very fun to have. But something you have that you couch a lot is the teddy thread that it's like too fluffy to pull through the holes of the canvas, right?
So we have it in, and again, this kind of harkens back to my my knitting shop days. So we have this in all sorts of natural colors, beige, black, white, cream, gray, and I think brown beige. I think we call this one brown, even though it's kind of beige. This one's called brown, black, white, cream, gray, and beige. And these are great for couching down and making trim on a Santa's coat. If you have a sheep and you want to make the sheep really fluffy. So again, you're just going to pull that tail to the back, couch it down by coming up, going over it, putting it back down. And it doesn't have to be put on like it's Fort Knox. You know, you want to do it like every 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 an inch, maybe even 3/4 of an inch, depending on your situation. So don't be afraid of couching.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but the thread that you mentioned that you had used for your challenge piece was Kreinik facets. Is that, or did you
I actually used, and again, I had it right here. What did I do with it? Oh my Lord, I'm losing my mind. I have a couple oh, here it is. Okay, I have a couple things that I think you carry all of these as well. So another great couching thread is facets. And this comes from Kreinik. I'm going to try to hold these up so you guys can see it.
Kind of looks like beaded, like something like you have a string of beads, but it's all somehow like kind of almost like ruched onto a piece of wire. So it looks beaded, but it's not, I guess. Is that the right way to say it? Kind of.
Yes, everyone thinks they're little beads. So this is the regular facets, and I think there's also mini facets.
Petite, I think. Petite facets. I think so.
We used to have both. We just have
so, but other yeah. But other things you can do is there's micro chenille from Kreinik that you can couch. There's yep. But what I was going to say is there are certain threads that you pretty much have to couch, like you literally cannot stitch in and out with them. But
well,
I'm
most of these.
Yeah.
And this is the wired Kreinik, which is almost identical to memory thread, except for it sparkles. So, and this is, and just as a little aside, God, I am dropping everything. Oh my Lord, what is wrong with me? This is the old way that Kreinik did their put up of it on these spools. The newer way is in these little packages. So don't think that this and this are two different threads. Of course, this is pink and this is gold. They're two different colors, but this is the same thread. It's just that this is the newer way Kreinik.
So you've got one on a spool and one in sort of a plastic put up for a peg in the shop. So,
right.
Yeah.
So they're the same. So if you are in a shop and able to see them, don't think
other things that come to my mind are GIMP from the thread nuts line. There's different types of GIMPs. You can couch a lot of things. I just saw our friend Joanna from Plum Stitchery this weekend couched straw, like real straw onto a canvas. You can couch a lot of things. There just happens to be some things that I would say are more
that's all you would do with them. Yes.
But the one thing that I'm going to show here is something that I was working on that's actually couched, and I pulled it out for purposes of this podcast, and I was playing with my needles so that I could show what I was doing. But I'm actually doing a coil couch with Angora. So Angora is,
love it.
Aren't they cool? So Mark Craddock actually taught me, rest in peace, Mark. He was a lovely needlepoint teacher that taught me how to do this.
If you haven't watched the episode with Mark, I highly recommend you go back and do that. He's fabulous.
He was a really neat guy. But he kind of specialized in Santa beards. And we had this, I think this is a Mile High Princess canvas that we had in the shop. And he had this coiling technique. And he said, oh yeah, go do that. Go. So I grabbed Angora, which in my opinion is a little too thick for an 18 count mesh canvas. So you definitely wouldn't want to try to basket weave with this Angora on 18 count. It works fine on 13. So this is the kind of thread that you truly can basket weave or long stitch or whatever you want to do. But I'm couching it with a piece of Vermilana in these coils. So again, you can use threads that are specifically intended to be couched on a canvas, or you can couch other things. I mean, there's no reason why you can't couch pearl cotton or whatever you choose to couch. It's just a technique where it lays on the top of your canvas. So
yes. And I have a Santa beard for, it's one of the squatty Santas that I did all couch coils for his beard, and it's fabulous. It's a little labor intensive because now you're couching.
I'm kind of following it around, and then I'm using this other thread. This is all in the back when I picked it up. So what I'm probably going to do is kind of go probably way too far away. Like I'm going to string this coil way farther away than I normally would. And then I'm going to go back with the Vermilana and hope that kind of tacks it in place. So But it's fun. It's just
fabulous.
something different to do with thread.
I'm gonna pull this off of my System 4 stand that's behind me really fast because I am feverishly working on this nutcracker because I had a request to do a stitch guide. And a lot of times we don't do a lot of stitch guide writing here. We just don't have the bandwidth. But I loved this piece, and my friend Susie talked me into writing a stitch guide, one of my customers, and now I've got a bunch of people waiting on this. So I have been stitching him, and you guys have seen him before. So this morning I'm holding up this nutcracker for those of you that aren't watching. And on the sleeve, sorry, I'm trying to do this without knocking the System 4 into my head. I couched the wired Kreinik on top. So
is that going up? Is that intentionally? So basically what it looks like is kind of like
half a bow. That's what it's supposed to
bow.
look like.
Yeah, I was gonna say a bow. So that's actually where it's staying. I see. I wasn't sure if it was just sitting there on the top of the canvas or you've actually tacked that all in. That's cool.
Well, I will say that I am not an artist. If you saw, I can't draw a stick figure. So this is from Labors of Love. And so when JP designed this, he had this gold, like half a bow stitch painted on there. But I decided to complete my pattern of my stitches and to couch it on top rather than stitching it. So it was really, I was kind of nervous about doing it because I hadn't couched on top of stitching before. Usually I will leave the area unstitched and kind of put whatever thread it is like into that little divot that's created by leaving it not stitched. And because of the nature of this pattern stitch that's on his jacket, I thought I'd get a better, more pleasing result and not have to compensate so much if I stitched over it. So
what are you using to couch it down?
I'm using gold beading thread, and
cool.
Gold beading thread is not metallic in nature. This is very metallic in nature. I was afraid it might show. Doesn't show at all because they're just little tiny stitches. So,
you know, a lot of people also use size 4 Kreinik. And so if you wanted to have a sparkle on top of that, that would be an option, but you chose not to. So.
Well, mainly because we don't carry size 4 Kreinik, and I wanted to just get it done. And I'm like, well, I'm going to try this gold beading thread. And I'm a big believer in give it a try. You can always just pull it out. Like if I'd done 4 stitches and they were glaringly obvious, I just would have yanked it out and been more patient. But patience isn't always my top.
Especially when you're prepping for a podcast challenge review.
Maybe that and trying to get a stitch guide done. So yes. And so there we go.
Just below the thread, use a thread you have to couch, is Sparkle and Shine, stitch a canvas in almost all metallic or sparkly thread. And guess what? Guess what I'm putting on the screen right now?
Okay, for those of you that have listened to us for more than a minute, Megan has been working on this piece since she came to my cottage in the fall of 2020. And it was almost done then. And I said to her at that point in time, if you don't finish that on the airplane, there's a problem.
Right? I know. And I didn't.
No.
And I didn't. And then I had to do the Pointing It Out podcast challenge to stitch something all in sparkly thread. So this is a piece by Rachel Donnelly. It's her champagne coupe glass. What's funny is she painted this on for me, these initials on here, probably even, I don't know, a year or more before I had it at your cottage with you. And so Rachel and I sort of had a bet. I don't know if she's going to watch this or not, but I was supposed to finish this one and she's supposed to finish her letter to Santa that she's been stitching for at least, she said, even longer than the amount of time that I was stitching this. And I'm going to be honest, I finished it and it was in the natural queue. I did not push this forward. So I've actually had this done for quite a while, you guys.
That's
so,
exciting.
And I almost never stitch all in sparkly thread. It is just not.
That was one of the hardest things on this list for me this year.
So this is Kreinik, Fireworks, Silk Lame. I already said Fireworks. Kreinik, Fireworks, Silk Lame. I guess that might be it. I'm trying to see. But it was super fun to stitch, and stitching with sparkle is not always for the for the faint of heart because it frays a little bit. You have to lay some of the threads down a little bit, but it was really fun and I'm glad I did it. So yay,
yay, you was right. Two things that come to mind. I think first of all, you were going to put it on a jean jacket. So so over the course of time, you changed your outcome, which makes it kind of good that you didn't do it then, because clearly in the end you had a change of heart and you're happier with it now.
You want to know why? Can we go down like a quick rabbit hole? And I am like
Never do that.
No, never. I will be taking like suggestions from watchers. I cannot find a great jean jacket. I've tried J. Crew, I've tried Levi, I've tried Gap. I don't like the fit of any of them. I've tried, and I don't like them. So I didn't want to put it on a jacket because I don't have a jacket I like.
Yeah,
so
you have to love it if you're going to put needlepoint on it.
I haven't found one that fits right. Lauren is also my shop friend, Lauren here, Sequin Lala. She's also on a mission to help me find the right jean jacket, but someday.
Keep us posted.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked earlier that there's no such thing as needlepoint police. Both Megan and I, and we've talked about this here and there, and I think we even had a whole episode on it about framing or not framing. And if you've been following along with the Wool and the Floss and see me stitching every day, you'll see sometimes I'm on a frame, sometimes I'm not. I will say to you, the one time you should 100% use a frame is if you're going to do all metallic. And I feel very badly because my daughter Kaylee was at the cottage with us last weekend, and she was determined, as a matter of fact, it may even be in this bag. It is. She was determined to stitch this Verner's can.
Cute.
And it's all in fireworks. And she's like, do I have to have it on a frame? I'm like, no, it'll be fine. Not fine. So now you can tell from the back. See how skewed it is? I have put it on the frame with staples to try to like preliminarily block it. And it is very, very, very difficult to block metallics because they're not a naturally made substance. They're man-made threads and they just don't block well. So I would say the one and only time I'm going to say to you, absolutely 100% use a frame. And I should have told Kaylee to wait, but she was really excited about stitching it. We didn't have the right size frame with us at the cottage. First world problem. So always use a frame.
But in addition to that, is that 13 or 18 count?
18.
So fireworks, what I was going to say, so yes, it's hard to block, but fireworks, if you're working on 18 count particularly, so that's not the case, excuse me, if you're working on 13, which was not the case for Kaylee on 18, I like to kind of make sure it's laying flat because it has more surface area on 18.
She did do it. She said, I figured out really fast, I'm much better off if I lay it not only on the front, but on the back as well.
Yeah.
And she did
just make sure it's not all spun together. Fireworks is just by the nature of the beast looks better that way. So, so my point in bringing that up is because it's easier to do that if you have both hands, meaning you could lean the stand up against something, or excuse me, the frame, and actually.
She was somehow managed to. And the funny thing too, Megan, you talked about the BLT earlier. I generally use these wood laying tools. They're my laying tool of choice. But I also use the BLT. I think you pointed it out. One of our puns that we don't ever mean to make, but we do. You pointed out time I was stitching the Nutcracker that I was clearly laying some threads because my BLT was on my needle minder. And so she took that one and she's like, you've been holding out on me, Mom. I love this BLT. Like, so I like the BLT. I love my wooden laying tool. And Kaylee would say, I like the wooden laying tool. I love the BLT. So to each his own. I think also she did that corduroy stitch, which is a diagonal satin in columns. So I think that also skewed it a little bit more. So I'm hoping it's salvageable. I'm working on it. So that is hers. But what I was really going to show you is, as you alluded to at the start of this portion of the podcast, doing something in all sparkles is really hard for me too. Like that's just not my mojo. So I might have a few canvases at home. I have been stitching since I was 7. So I went through my entire stash and I found 2 canvases that I thought were suited well for me to do all in metallic. I don't even know if this canvas is available anymore. It is from Pocket Full of Stitches years ago. Like I probably had this in my stash for 15 years, 20 years. And it's from Raymond Crawford. His number starts with 731 is his his number. And if we order most things from Raymond now, they're in the 2000s and I think even 3000s. So I'm not sure he makes these anymore, but if you are, watching well or listening while you're driving, it's just a cute little like heart, kind of looks like a little like a Radco ornament, like one of those puffy metallic ornaments. So I thought it was well suited for all metallics. And I used Krynic and Neon Rays Plus and some Silk Lame braid, and then that Painter Shimmer blend. I think that's Mary C. I love that. So, and then I added some little heart attachments. I think those are from the collection.
Oh, cute. I can't, yeah. Oh, cute. So they're like sewn on little doodads.
As a matter of fact, I'm noticing that I was all done and I think I was so excited to be done. I didn't even cut off my beading thread yet. It's still hanging. So I'll have to do a little cleanup on that. But this guy has been done. I finished him maybe about a month and a half ago and intentionally didn't turn him in because I wanted to be able to talk about it on the podcast, because for the most part, Megan and I don't push our own things through. We try to be patient and wait in line just like everybody else. So shaped ornaments take a little longer, so I didn't dare turn it in until we were done talking about it. So
it's true.
It's my
right.
metallic. Do you have something for bedazzling a canvas?
Here we go. It's time to bedazzle a canvas. And you know that this is not my favorite thing, but I was talked into this. I'm going to show you what I'm working on. I have all the beads picked, I think. Wait, I don't think I have them all in my hand. Hold on. Let me just see what I got going on.
You dropped them like I dropped everything.
So yeah. So speaking of stitching things because you kind of have to, or you get sidetracked or whatever. So this is a brand new canvas that's going to be released at market from Kate Woodward.
Yes. And we interviewed Kate Woodward. I interviewed her 4 weeks ago, maybe. She was
feeling like that. Yeah. So this is an insert for the Rachel Berry leather self-finishing clutch, and it's a blue and white striped background, which I love, and the little phoenix that we pulled from, if you're familiar with the tobacco leaf pattern, there's a little phoenix bird in there, and so we've decided that she's kind of got a life of her own, and so she is on this canvas kind of full, very fancy. So we did a what's that called, contest. She's on Instagram, and the contestant who won naming her her name is Fancy with a PH, Fancy the Phoenix.
I was just going to ask you what her name was, so that's good.
Fancy the Phoenix. Yep. So I've decided, so she's got a lot of detail in her, but I've decided that her little headdress, so she's kind of got, I don't know if it's like branches or what exactly it is in her hair, but I've decided that should be beaded. And so I've chosen some gold beads and some purple and some turquoise, and I'm going to bead the top. So I am not a very good beader, but one thing that I do know is beading should really come last. Like that's sort of like your last thing that you should do. And I'm very, very close to being done with the background and the bird. And so I'm about to bead this. So stay tuned.
I'm excited for you. That's great.
Wish me luck. It's not my jam, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it.
For those of you who have not watched, I love to bead, and Megan, for the most part, would choose a sparkly thread in place of a bead. So she is obviously very devoted to Fancy the Phoenix.
I am.
Bead for her.
I will tell you one other thing. You also forget how practical I am. And I just think that I'm actually worried about this, that's going to be a wearable, and then I'm going to have some beads on it. So I'm going to really have to make sure I lasso those beads down pretty well so that they stay.
You might even lasso them like 2 or 3 times instead of just once.
Right. So that's one of the reasons why beading isn't my jam, because it's beautiful on a framed piece or on, a lot of ways. But if I'm a pillow and a wearable and a kind of a use your needlepoint person. And so it's just a little more delicate beads is.
So I beaded something that, I don't know if you'd call it a wearable, but it's something that's going to get a lot of action, I guess, is.
Ooh. Oh, but look at that.
This is a design by an in-shop exclusive design by my local artist that we kind of came up with together, because we are fortunate enough to have people that have decided that my shop is a destination. I think they've decided your shop is a destination. So that's pretty exciting. As a matter of fact, I had 2 gals come here last week, but this was right before the retreat, that they've been customers for a long time, but not like people we talk to every week.
Uh-huh.
It was their birthday. They're, I think, 2 years apart. Oh, I can't remember. Catherine and oh, I'm Jackie. No, I was trying. Do you remember how many years apart they were? 2 or 4? Okay. They told me. Sorry, it was Catherine and Jackie, and I was too busy trying to remember how many years. It doesn't matter. They were planning a birthday trip. They had no reason to be in Detroit or Grosse Pointe, but they just decided to come here. And then they designed the rest of their birthday like 4 days around being here, which was just so flattering. So yes, indeed, we have become a destination LNS. And so this is a luggage tag, which clearly will never go on my regular luggage, but a carry-on piece that doesn't leave my site. This is a leather finish that my leather finisher designed for us. So when I ordered this canvas, it comes as a standard rectangle, but she wanted to have it finished, and she and I worked together. So when I discussed this with her, she's like, I would rather put it in the typical luggage tag shape. So she had me not stitch the corners, and it goes, but I beaded the needle and the scissors. And even though this is on 18 mesh, I used 2 different size beads because I was afraid if I used the size 14 bead, the smaller bead, that the needle would kind of disappear.
Okay.
Top ones are the larger bead, the size 11 bead, and the scissors are in the size 14, the smaller bead. And then I just kind of put my needle through and made sure that those were nice and straight. So it's called straight line beading. And the other thing that is kind of fun about it is silver beads are really tough. Like the regular beads we get from Sundance aren't super silvery. And I know you carry these as well. So if you're in a needlepoint store and you see the Sundance beads that have the red top, that means that they are their true silver beads, which I think actually have a little bit of gold in them. Is that right?
Plated. Yeah. They're silver and gold plated. Yeah.
So
I think in fact, that's what I have on mine too. I was just holding those up, but maybe not. I was trying to find those.
So they are more expensive than the standard bead because there literally is some precious metal in them. I mean, just plated. They're not like, they're not something you're gonna make a necklace out of.
Right.
So anyways, and we keep them in these little baggies because we're always afraid that we won't remember which beads they are and try to set them apart.
Struggle with that here too. I totally get it.
Yeah, so they're truly a real silver looking bead, as opposed to the rest of the silver ones are kind of see-through-y silver and they don't quite translate the way I wanted them to. So yeah.
Well, we did it. We beat it. I beat it. Well, I'm preparing to beat. Doing the best I can here.
You're gonna do it. The planning's half the process.
Well, honestly, I need to get out my favorite beading accoutrements. I love those little we sell them a ton. What is it called? The thing from the collection. It's like a bead. It's like a oh my gosh, what is it called? Easy beater. Yes. And it magnetizes to your canvas and it's sticky on top. I love that thing. So I need to pull that out. And then I'm thinking, I hate the, sorry, I tell my kids not to use the word hate. I am not a huge fan of the clear fire line or the clear.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of it either. It's hard to work with.
But with such small areas and 3 different colors of beads, having to pull 3 different colors of beading thread doesn't sound very smart. So I got to get all that put together, but we'll see.
And I think it's funny that you like the easy beater. I love the beading cases from Accoutrements. And as a matter of fact, we both sell ones that have the Pointing It Out podcast logo on it.
We do.
Yes, we do. Are you out of yours?
I like those for a larger canvas because I feel like it takes up more real estate on my frame. I like the Easy Beater is smaller and for a smaller section. So I don't know. It's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
And I use that case because and I know Megan likes to stitch and etc. on sitting on her couch. I tend to sit at a table, even with my floor stand. I tend to sit at a table. So putting the bead case either in front of me or using a magnet to attach the top of the bead case to my canvas. But to Megan's point, this would be kind of a hard squeeze if I were trying to do it on here.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Lots. I think there was a podcast about that too, if I'm being honest.
I think there probably was. We've been at this almost 3 years. There's probably a podcast about just about everything, but
Hard to
still
keep
always
track.
something more to learn and have fun with. So
It's true. It is true. So that is kind of concluding our, what, 3/4 of the way through the year challenge update. That leaves us with about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 left to cover at the end of the year, when we can also, well, what have we done? Have we waited until after the first of the year to do the review and then actually have people submit their entries, and then we do it all in one podcast? I can't remember, but
I think that's what we did. I
decide
think,
what we're going to do this year.
yeah. So I think we will probably we'll have to talk about how people send in their entries. You usually handle that side of it. Do you want to talk about that right now? How we've done it in the past? Will you stick with that format?
We've done it a couple of different ways. I think the way that worked out the best was for people to fill out the Google form. I think we put a Google form up somewhere, which it was probably on our the bio in our Instagram account, which we're happy to do again this year. I think that worked out best. Why that works is because basically you put your name, your contact information, and the fact that you have in fact completed your 23 and 23 challenge. We are not policing this heavily. We do kind of spot check and see, does it look like this person has completed the things on their Instagram accounts and such, but we're not here to police it. So we just kind of, honesty policy is the best. And then we're able to create a spreadsheet from that then we can draw a random number generator and grab for the prizes. So yeah, I think we'll probably do that closer. And if people are finished, maybe we should get that going. We could at any time post that. So we'll talk about it, and we'll follow along with us on Instagram, the Pointing It Out podcast on Instagram. And we will get that form up sooner rather than later.
That sounds like a good plan, because I know there are some people that have finished it. I am not one of those people.
No. Well, yeah, that's all right. We don't get to win the prizes, so we're not as motivated, right?
I know, but I think we're pretty motivated. I think we do a pretty darn good job. So yeah. We also maybe have less stitching time than maybe some other people. But on the other hand, there's some people that lives are very, very, very full, and they use stitching as their like therapy and relaxation time. So they manage to get a lot of stitching in too. So I guess it doesn't really matter what real life looks like for you.
True story.
Good,
all right. Well, I think that wraps it up, does it not?
It does. If you are joining us for the first time, thank you for hanging with us. Hopefully you found some helpful tips and tricks along the way, and some motivation, or maybe a laugh or two. And please hit subscribe on that YouTube page. That helps other stitchers find us. So we would appreciate that. And we will be back in a couple weeks with a newer designer in the industry. There's your little teaser for the next go round. And then we've got Market, we've got the Pointing It Out podcast. Beginning of November, I'll be rolling out the new date for the spring podcast in Detroit. So obviously the St. Louis retreat is has been full for quite a while. And the spring retreat where Megan and I hang out together in Detroit will be next spring, and the lottery will be probably the first week in November. So stay tuned to our Instagram page for details on that.
That's right. All right, guys, have a great night. Talk to you soon.
Fun spending time with you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.